The Seahawks put the proverbial belt to the asses of the 49ers on Saturday, winning 41-6 and keeping them on the inevitable crash course to face the Rams in the NFC Championship game. Author and beat reporter Michael-Shawn Dugar is here to break it all down. Let's light him up.
I'm Jacson Bevins, and this is Cigar Thoughts.
Welcome back to the Cigar Lounge. I am Jacson Bevins, and along with my lascivious producer, Mike Barwin, this is the Cigar Thoughts podcast. And man, we've had MSD circled as the guy we wanted in the lounge if and when the Seahawks got to this point, and I'm beyond excited for this conversation. But first, cigars and whiskey. Cigar Thoughts is proud to be partnered with Seattle Cigar Concierge and Balvenie Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. Seattle Cigar Concierge and I have teamed up to release two versions of high-quality Cigar Thoughts stogies, both of which you can purchase by following the link on the show page or by visiting cigarthoughtsnfl.com. Mike and I love doing the show, and there are two ways y'all listening and watching can help support it so that we can keep the episodes coming. One is by purchasing the cigars, and the other is by subscribing to our YouTube channel at Cigar Thoughts, where you can watch full episodes, as well as the funny and insightful clips that Mike puts together. Give a thumbs up to the stuff you like, and let us know what you think in the comments. And of course, you can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. Man, I was so fortunate to be able to go to this game against the 49ers on Saturday. Shout out to Nate and Devin and Mike, who brought me along with them for what turned into just a 5-hour party. And you know, I was telling them on the way down, I was nervous with the oblique for Sam Darnold, and you never know what's going to happen in the playoffs and rivalry game. I just said I think they're going to kill him, and I was too conservative because I predicted 31-13 Seahawks, and it felt like it was that by halftime. So just had a blast. Was happy to have been there, but it's a different story this week because I believe the two best teams in the NFL are facing off for the right to go to the Super Bowl in the 49ers home stadium. And joining me to talk about the last game and take a look at what we got coming up is one of my favorite people to have in the Cigar Lounge. He covers the Seahawks for The Athletic. He is the author of a book that cannot stay on the shelves. It is called The Franchise Seattle Seahawks, a curated history of the Legion of Boom era. He is Michael-Shawn Dugar. Mike, what's happening?
What up, man? Appreciate you having me. I'm doing good. I'm busy, but doing good.
Yeah, you are. I mean, you talk about picking the right year to write a book about this team. My goodness.
Yeah. And it's informed informally a lot of my coverage of the team. You know, I just know what I'm looking for, you know, because I just know what a championship team looks like. I know what the habits look like. I know what it's supposed to sound like, what it's supposed to feel like. And I wasn't around that LOB team that won, but just doing all that research, reliving history, you know, I mean, it's very obvious what you're supposed to build, no matter where you are, by the way.
Right.
You know, just before we hopped on, I was watching John Harbaugh's introductory press conference with the Giants on NFL Network, and it's amazing how much of the stuff that John said you got to do to build a contender is, I could find you a transcript day that has Mike McDonald saying almost verbatim the same stuff. Now, obviously, they work together, but it's not a coincidence, right? They're just certain foundational things every team has to have to get to this point, you know, and the Seahawks have that stuff. And I knew what to look for at each stage of the offseason, in part because I had just written a book on how those guys got it done.
Yeah, well, talk to me before we get to these games. Talk to me a little bit about some of the parallels that you're understanding, because you're around these guys and you spent so much time talking to the guys that did it 10, 12 years ago, and now you're seeing it unfold in real time with guys who are trying to do it now. What sort of mentality or personality parallels are you seeing between those teams and this one?
Yeah, I think the big one is that both teams have an identity, and you need that. Because you're gonna lose some games. You're gonna have an off day, right? It's just not gonna be your day. You're gonna have hard practices. You're gonna have bad practices. You're gonna have good practices. Players are gonna get hurt. Players are gonna play great. Players are gonna have things happen in their personal lives. Coaches are gonna have things happen in their personal lives. Okay, you have a losing streak. Whatever it is, what do you fall back on? what can you return to? What principles? It's almost like religion, right? Like, all right, I've lost my way as a person. Let me get back to my faith, whatever chapter or Bible verse you like that gets you back on track. It's the same thing in football, right? All right, we're not rushing the passer well. Well, what is that supposed to look like for us? We're not running the ball well. What is that supposed to look like? We're not tackling well. What is that supposed to look like? That's kind of why I knew the Ryan Grubb thing wouldn't work, because his scheme kind of doesn't have an NFL identity. So if you hit a lull in week 9, 10, and 11, okay, what are you falling back on? What is Grubb saying? All right, guys, we got to get back to us. Well, who are you? This is your first time coaching the NFL. You're still figuring out who you are. And he was in an unfair spot, so I'm not blaming him for that. But it's different for Mike. Mike knows who he is. Even Clint Kubiak, who's not like the best coordinator in the world, the system is proven. It's tried and true. It's got all these rules. You can go back 20 years and show wide zone Shanahan principles, right? 30 years at this point. So if you're not running the ball well, that they weren't for months, all right, what is it supposed to look like? How are we? Maybe we need to get back to teaching this fundamental, this footwork, this scheme, whatever. And the Legion of Boom era teams had that. They're like, all right, this is our principles. This is who we are. Now, it was a lot easier for them, I think, because it was just, all right, whatever Cam's doing, do that. And if you're on offense, whatever Marshawn's doing, do that. Not everything he's doing, but most of what he's doing, do that. It was, you had people who embodied it. And this team has that too. That's probably the other parallel, that they're figureheads. They represent each principle. You can watch how Ernest plays and how Spoon plays and how Jacson does the dirty work and how Cup does the dirty work, and how guys just carry themselves, how Charles practices, how Abe practices. You can just see the people. Like, if you're not sure, look at that guy. Like, watch this guy, watch this position group. The Legion of Boom era teams had that too. If you weren't sure what you should be doing, go watch the DBs practice. How they're practicing is how we should practice. And I think both, you have to have that first. You can't just magically have it in October. You got to have it in April. You got to have it in May. These Legion of Boom teams were fighting so damn hard in practice, they were getting fined. In May, in spring, they said it then. So when you said it there, that's what I was looking for then. That's how you know. Okay, in October, the Bucks kicked our ass on defense. All right, let's get back to who we are. How do we do that? We can't figure out who we are in week 6. We figured out who we were in late July. Let's revert back to that and those principles. So you got to have that first. Teams who don't have that, I don't care how much talent you have, like the Eagles, for instance, you just can't turn it on. You just, that's not how football works. Basketball teams maybe get away with that, but you just don't get away with that in the NFL.
Yeah. It's funny. All great teams, I mean, all teams, but I think it's especially pronounced with great teams, seem to have two different types of leaders. You've got leaders from the actual doing the job standpoint, and then you've got your cultural leaders. And in a perfect world, those are the same people in the locker room. But, this came through in your book. You had leaders who were that way because of how they handled practice, how they handled preparation, how they performed on the field. And then you had leaders who really helped dictate the vibe in the locker room, dictate the vibe in practice. And sometimes it's the same thing and sometimes it's different. Who are the leaders in this locker room and in which ways?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of different guys in different ways, like you mentioned. For instance, if you want to know how you are supposed to play, like what is like, okay, I just signed with the Seahawks. I'm off the waivers and on week 4, I just showed up. All right, I'm trying to learn the lay of the land. I got to figure out how to play like a Seahawk. If you were to ask me, if you walk in, Mike, what am I supposed to do? Who should I look at? I say, go to practice, watch number 21. Turn on the film of a game and watch number 21.
Yeah.
No matter right or wrong, play like that. And when I say play like that, how hard he's playing, how he's running to the ball. He's good. He's a good tackler too, like good technique, like covers well and all the talent stuff too. But just watch how he's playing and do that. We can fix whatever mistakes you got later. You blow an assignment, whatever, you take a bad angle, whatever. We can fix that. But just play how he's playing because it's undeniable once you watch him. And there's a guy in really every position group who's like that, but that's where I would tell someone who just shows up, no matter what side of the ball you are, to be very clear. Like if you're a left guard and you get claimed by the Seahawks and you want to know how to play, watch number 21 and just do that and apply it to your team, your side of the ball, your position. I would say starting with Spoon, but then you got the vocal guys like Kobe Bryant tells the DBs, follow me. I'm going to lead you guys today. Jaron Reed, his message every game is some version of run and hit. He'll dress it up with some other stuff, but the gist is the same: run and hit. And he's the through line between the Legion of Boom era defense and this one. He's the only guy who's played both units. And Ernest is like the heartbeat. He bears it all. Like Ernest wears his emotions on his sleeve, that, and you need guys like that who just, it means something to them. Because if it means something to them and you care about him, you'll feed, off of that, and if you just need someone who you don't even want to hear nobody talk, you just want to just watch somebody who's got the right habits every day, and then takes it to Sunday, go watch number 11. Yes, he can run routes. He's great hands. But watch him in practice, watch his training, watch how he even responds to good games. Watch how he responds to bad games. It's all the same. Watch number 11. Watch how he does it, and then you'll know how you're supposed to conduct yourself, whether you are Cody White and you're a practice squad guy getting elevated up and down, or you're an all-pro. Like the behavior is all supposed to look the same. We're all the receivers. We're all supposed to block. We're all supposed to run the right routes at the right depth. We're all supposed to do all the technique things the right way. Have the right habits at practice. Take walkthroughs seriously. All that stuff. Take care of your body. So I can go on and on, but there's just a lot of those guys. They set the standard by just how they behave. Some guys is vocal, like I mentioned, Jay Reed, Kobe, Ernest, but for a lot of it, it really is just watch the violence that number 0 plays with, watch the effort that 72 plays with, like all that. You can just watch. A lot of these guys, you don't have to hear anything from them, and that's great leadership. Because sometimes you don't want to hear nobody talk about nothing, man. Like, and all the sports movies have sensationalized like what halftime, pregame, and stuff like that looks like. It's not like that. 80% of the time. Most of it is just like, it's understood. I don't need you to fire me up. We're down 21-0. I know we're down 21-0. I'm out there participating in the 21-nothingness of what we just happened. Like, we need to just go out there and just be us, That's right. What does us look like? You don't become new people at halftime of a game or pregame. So those are some of the guys I'd say, just watch how they just doing it, and you'll figure it out the longer you're with the team.
Well, it's really cool to hear that those are the examples that you chose, because I was talking with a couple of buddies the other day, and we were talking about like how they're outside of like, JSN, first team All-Pro, receiving yards leader this year, that kind of thing. Like, you didn't really have a lot of statistical anomalies this year. It really is a whole is greater than the sum of its parts feeling to this team. And so we were talking about like who are the standout players, and a buddy of mine asked me who my favorite players on this team are. And my top 2 were Devin Witherspoon 1, Jacson Smith-Njigba 2. And so it's cool to hear that behind the scenes, they're doing the types of things that are earning that level of respect from their teammates, because these are guys that haven't been in the league very long. And, I will say, fast charging is number 3. Nicky Manwari is quickly climbing the ranks of my favorite players also. But, what you're talking about practice, I think it's so easy to forget. Like, we all know, okay, how you practice, how you play, you hear it. And it's like important to be good in practice and all these things, but we don't ever really talk about it. And what you're touching on, the way that you answered that question, I think was so important, because you use practice as the framework for this is why these guys are leaders. And Kurt Warner told a story on Twitter recently that he said, he was so confused when he first came up why he wasn't starting, because he felt like he was the most talented quarterback on the team. And it took him a couple of seasons to realize the reason he wasn't starting wasn't because he wasn't the best quarterback. It's because he was the worst practicer of the quarterbacks. And you are proving to everyone else in that locker room and on the coaching staff who you are in practice. And he does the math, and he says, of all my time spent playing football in the NFL, less than 5% of it was during the game. The other 95% is in practice. And so if I'm not out there being the best practicer, then I don't deserve the right to go show that I'm the best player on game day. And I love that level of self-awareness, but I also really love that framing. And that was something that really stood out about the LOB era of the Seahawks, was that their practices were vicious. Like there were rivalries within practice. It mattered who won the reps. It mattered within the positional group who won the reps. It mattered whether the defense stopped the offense or the offense scored on the defense. Like they took that shit personally. And that makes it so that you don't have to manufacture the emotion. You don't have to manufacture the intensity on game day. It's already there because you've been doing it, walkthroughs through hitting.
Yeah, and I think it's important also on top of that is to know why you are practicing that way. And that's where Mike McDonald, I think, you want to talk about parallels to go back to that. Like Pete's kind of ethos was like, all right, compete to be the best possible version of you. And Mike's doing that. It's just the wording is just different. He chooses like chasing edges, 12 is one thing, but the idea is the same. We're practicing because we have a style of play that we need to uphold, a standard we got to uphold. And it's how we practice, it's how we eat, it's our sleep schedules, it's our travel schedule, it's how we take care of our body after practice or pregame, whatever. It's why we're doing that. Why are we going so hard in practice? Why are we doing this particular drill today? Why are we not doing this particular drill on Thursday? Why do we do it on Fridays instead? Why do we do this? Why are we repping this coverage at this hash? Why are we repping this blocking scheme against this front? When you understand all that and the style you're trying to play, and you know what that is because you established it in April, May, June, whatever, July, well, okay, then it's easier to just maintain that practice habit, maintain the walkthrough. Because, okay, I know that this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what we're working towards. This is who we are. And you could just see that in how the guys conduct themselves, which is why win or lose, sometimes the offense is upset. Like the Houston game really stands out to me. They were like, man, we did not play that well. Hung 27 points on the Texans. Right? The teams just don't do that. Well, why were they like that? Not because, it's the cliche, we got stuff to clean up. Everybody says that. No, they were like, we didn't play well. And you go watch the tape and you're like, yeah, they turned it over 4 times. One of those turnovers was a touchdown for the Texans. A lot of their points did come on short fields, I believe. Only one long drive in that game. They were sloppy, penalties and stuff. So, yeah, because they weren't at the standard. The standard is not about the score. The standard is about the tape. What do you put on tape? Same thing for the defense against the Titans. They gave up 17 points on defense because there was a punt return in there. And they were all pissed. I had a guy who wouldn't even talk to me on defense after a win. He was like, we didn't play to our standard. And he was like, Mike, talk to me next week. He's like, we didn't play to our standard, right? That's important. Yeah, they won. That's great. It wasn't a selfish thing he was saying. He was like, all right, we didn't do what we were supposed to do. And then Spoon, I'm glad Spoon went on the record. This wasn't Spoon, but he did later go on the record at the podium that game and was like, yeah, we're glad we won, but we didn't do what we were supposed to do on defense. He said that. And he's right. Win or lose. And I think that's very important. Same thing for the offense after the Vikings game. They didn't play particularly well, but the other team didn't even score. Because there's a standard, you know what it's supposed to look like, you don't really care about the other team, if that makes sense. Like, did we play our ball? Yes. All right, then we should have. It should look a certain way. Ernest Jones was asked after the San Francisco game on Saturday, did you expect this or did this surpass your expectations? And Ernest was like, no, it didn't surpass anything. He actually asked the questioner to repeat it. Like, hey, you said surpass, right? Or exceed, one of those words. And just to clarify, because he wanted to make sure, like, hey, I'm not being cocky, but we just know if we do us, the score can look like this, no matter who it's against or whether it's week 6, week 3 against the Saints or week 20 against the Niners, right? And that goes back to the style thing. Like, we just be us. Us is good enough. And Pete Carroll kind of believed in that too. He would tell guys, just be you. Don't make nothing up. Every game's a championship, so you don't got to treat none of them different. It's the same, different ways to skin a cat, basically. Right. But you got to get guys to believe it first. Right? Everything's coach speak till the players bring it to life. Right? Then it becomes a culture. Yeah. And I think that's what they have now.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things there, and one of them was talking about the why. And the thing is the how becomes easier when you understand the why. And so you're not, when you have those base level principles to fall back on, like, okay, I know my technique is this, but it's very easy as an athlete to get really mechanical and start you almost become myopic in terms of, okay, my responsibility is this. And you're so focused on the how that it is easy to forget the why. And if you're confident in the why, when you're confident in what you're being asked to do and how it fits into the greater puzzle, then you've got, it's a lot easier to play free. One last guy that I'm really curious about in terms of impact on the culture, both on the field, in practice, locker room, etc. I mentioned Jacson Smith-Njigba as the one guy with the statistical standout year. But I think there's a case to be made that the best player on this team this year is Leonard Williams. Talk to me about the impact he had when he came over and the impact that he's having now with the team this year.
Yeah, as much as you want to kind of program players to just do your job no matter what, no matter the circumstances, whether we're eliminated from the playoffs or playing for a championship, they're humans, right? They're still humans. There's still that human element. So, if you're on the back end of a defense and you're watching tape with your guys up front and you're like, man, we have to overcompensate because such and such doesn't have it, right? And then number 99 shows up in October and you're like, okay. That's what it's supposed to look like. It's the same thing with Ernest, by the way. It's the same idea. It's like, all right, the real has arrived. Like the real has walked into the building, and that's what Leo brought in 2023. It was like, okay, this is our difference making. This is our Max Crosby. This is our Myles Garrett, and this is our Micah Parsons. Like this is our difference maker, our Bosa, our TJ Watt, the guy who, all right, when we play the other team, they got to deal with 99, and we play off of that, And I think Leo's humility mixed with selflessness, mixed with talent, has been perfect. It's evolved over the years because Leo's a pretty straight shooter, and he's a very great player, and he's not like sorry that he's a great player. Like he'll let you know, like I'm nice, I do this, But also, he's selfless because of where he's at in his career. Being a great player has won him nothing, for like 9 years or whatever. It won him very little. And so he knows like I need other great people around me. I need to be in a good culture. I got to be in the right place to win. Sometimes it's when you get a player that matters quite a bit. Too, we've seen that with the quarterback position. When they got Sam, when they got Geno mattered as much as the fact that they got them. When they're getting Cooper Kupp, same thing. For Leo, it's like, all right, I'm a part of a whole. Because just being talented and being on talented fronts, Leo's been on great defensive lines. So you go look at the Jets D line that he was on with Sheldon Richardson. I think Muhammad Wilkerson might have been on that defense. Like that front was good. The Giants front that he left with playing next to Dexter Lawrence was good. And he won nothing. So he gets here, he's like, guys, I want to win. So I'm going to do what it takes to win. And when you see Leo doing that, if you're a young buck, I mean, you just got to shut up and observe, whether Leo says anything or not. Now, he does speak, but even if he didn't, I think that's his value, where he's at in his career is being like, hey, guys, this is special. Trust me. I know. It's like when the reformed gang member comes back and talks to the high schoolers, like, hey, look, just trust me, okay? I've lived this. Listen to me. I've been on the other side of this, right? That's Leo. He came back from being on trash teams and be like, hey, look, we got something here. Let's build together. That's where Leo's value is. As much as the on-field stuff matters too, like I mentioned, but it really is where he's at in his career. Tank is the same way, where it's like, I came here to win. I've been great, but me just being great ain't got me nothing but money, which is great, but they want to win.
Yeah, and it's such a great point because in the current culture that surrounds sports, I'm part of it. I play into it, all this stuff. It's so easy to get drawn into the quality of this player or that player, and lose the context of the team because I think the best football player on the planet right now is Myles Garrett. How many games did the Browns win? Right? I mean, it's like you cannot do your job better at a higher level than what Myles Garrett is doing right now. And it ain't anywhere close to enough. And so, it's so important to not only be great, but to have it be a cascading effect where the people around you can be greater because of your greatness. And it really does seem like the arrival of Leonard Williams has had that effect on this team. I think another thing that's very important, you hear coaches say it all the time, to the point where it's almost background noise. You hear them talk about playing complementary football, and it's like, well, yeah, okay, sure. We want the defense to be good, and we want the offense to be good. We want the run game to be good, and we want the pass game to be good. But really, it goes back to something that you were talking about a few minutes ago, which is, and I think that we saw it on its fullest display on Saturday against the 49ers, is that if the offense has a game like they did against Minnesota, you still have freedom knowing that your defense is going to pick you up, right? You can have games where the defense is getting thrashed, like Thursday night game against the Rams, and knowing like, hey, if we don't fold here, this offense can score points. Shaheed can steal one, right? Like just even though we're getting our asses kicked, don't fold because we can still win this game. And I think that is so important in order to make a run, because if you are one dimensional and that dimension doesn't have it that day, or you're running into a coach, styles make fights, you run into a coach that is uniquely schemed to take that dimension away from you. You know, this is what did in Miami, you know, when they get to cold weather. Despite all the points they scored a couple years ago, they go to Kansas City in the freezing cold, can't move the football. They didn't have that complementary aspect to it. But then when all three phases are clicking, you get 41-6 in the playoffs. And that to me was so incredible. Being at that game and watching it in real time, you could just see there was a different level of speed and ferocity on offense, on defense, and very clearly on special teams. How important is it to put something like that on tape when you're going back and watching and seeing everybody do their jobs as well as they did against the 49ers?
Yeah, I think the three phases thing, what brings it to life more than just saying it, right? Because you're right, everyone does say it, is showing it in application beyond the splash plays. For example, in week 16, Sam throws a pick, right? Okay, what does it look like to have the offense's back? Because you can just say it, okay, what does that look like? Well, it looks like Josh Jobe locking up Puka on third down, right? To get the 3 and out. Okay, when they get the 3 and out, now they are punting. All right, so they're punting immediately. All right, that sets Shaheed can't run back a punt they don't kick, right? So he has to, you have to force a punt. All right, well, how do you get them to where they have to throw on third down, which is obviously advantageous? Well, you get to Stafford on early downs, force him to have to throw. Job, you do your job, and then they punt to Shaheed, and then we go from there, and then it's an entirely new ball game. Week 18, Sam throws to Cooper Kupp on 4th and 4, first drive of the game, turnover on downs. Okay, how do we have the offense's back? You can say it, but what does it look like? Well, it looks like stopping. I think Christian McCaffrey had a run on that first drive. You get to third down. All right, it starts with, I believe, Nicky Mwori tackling the fullback on third down, or either that or he threw to Juwan Jennings. Either way, they got a third down stop. All right, well, now they punt. All right, well, what does it look like after that? Well, Shaheed had like a 12-yard return on top of a face mask penalty. Now we're at the 35 right after that. That's what it looks like beyond the splash plays, because then Zach Charbonnet runs a 27-yard touchdown on 3rd and 2. Now we have the lead. But it's every play in the sequence. And Mike's good at showing that. Like it's everything. If everyone just does their 1/11th or whatever fraction you want to use, he likes 1.09 because it equals 12. But 1/11th, whatever. If you do your part, the big plays happen, right? You make your block, you cover your guy, you run your stunt up front of the D-line, then we get the Shaheed big plays, then we get the Zach big plays, then we get the Jax big plays, or the D-Law scoop and scores, or whatever it is. It's every play in the sequence, and that's where the complimentary ball has to show up, and it's everybody believing that they are part of that. Whether you are Brady Russell blocking at the point of attack on a kick return, right? Like, Brady has to believe in his heart of hearts. So, like, if I just do my part, Shaheed might score. Because then if the other 9 guys believe that too, well, then Shaheed's going to score, right? Because, Shaheed's got the speed, right? So I think Mike does a really good job of sewing all that stuff. He shows when guys make a tackle in open space on 2nd and 8. that forces 3rd and 6 and shows them like, hey, if that guy had fell forward and they got 3rd and 4, we're running an entirely different scheme. We have to worry about entirely different stuff, But you made it 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 8 or whatever. So now we can unleash Leo, who gets the TFL. Like it all works together. But you got to show them that and show them that their little 1/11th matters, because it may not be in the stat sheet. They might not talk about it on the broadcast or whatever. But if you show it to your guys and highlight that, then that they'll believe in all 3 phases, whatever it is. I think that's why they've had big punt returns, big punt blocks. Anthony Bell blocked one. They blocked, I think, multiple field goals this year. Jay Love blocked one. Even Warry blocked one. That stuff doesn't happen if guys don't believe in setting up the big play. And that goes to the process stuff that Mike's always talking about as well.
Yeah. One of my favorite things about having you on the show is you do this really good job of blending who you are as a person with the job that you actually do in covering the team and balancing that subjectivity with that objectivity. I'm going to ask you to set the press credentials down for this next one. You're just watching a football game. At what point did you know this was over on Saturday? When did you say, yeah, it's done?
I had a really good feeling once Shaheed took that back. And then once they got the 4th down stop on the next drive, then I really knew. I was like, then I knew for sure. I was like 90% sure after the kick return touchdown, and then once they got the 4th down stop, I was like, yeah, they're in their heads. The kick return felt like the Super Bowl, in that the kick return is, I guess, the equivalent of the safety on the first play, and then the 4th down stop is the equivalent of Cam just decapitating Demaryius Thomas. At that point, you're just like, all right, this game is over. I don't even remember what the score was when Cam hit DT like that, but it was over at that point. It's the same effect, because football is really, I don't use like guys wanted it more. I think that's dumb. Or like tried harder. But football is physical. It hurts. And if you don't
you can see that in like 3rd and 4th quarter, though. That I do think that's where the want to, the disparity between who wants it more can show up. But you're right. Early on, kidding me, like the Niners weren't. We saw them gassing themselves up in the tunnel and yelling at fans and all that. They wanted it just as bad. But I will say this to your point about the Shaheed return. And this is another example about how, social media is not real life, because, I got these illiterate bozos clogging up my feed all week leading up to the game, from San Francisco. But you get to the game, and first of all, shout out to the crowd. It was like 95% Seahawks fans in there, which has not been the case for 49ers games of late. So they held it down. Shout out to everybody that paid the money and kept the tickets and showed up. It was so loud. It was great. But we had some Niner fans in our section, of course, still. And I got to say, they were all great. Like to the point where like you kind of felt like you didn't even want to like talk shit to them, because they were just, you could see it. But there was still some like good-natured back and forth leading up to kickoff. And you could feel it immediately with the Niners fans once he housed that thing. Because it was just like, okay, you got the sense that they knew everything had to break their way to have a chance in this game, that they felt overmatched in this game. And when Shaheed did that, you could just feel it. It was like, okay, this is how this one's going to go. For me, obviously, I felt good about this game going in. The opening kickoff helped validate those feelings. But I still wanted to see a throw from Sam Darnold that made me believe, okay, the offense is going to be able to do enough to keep this 2-score or 3-score lead going throughout the rest of the game, because the Eagles were a more talented version than this iteration, a more talented team than this iteration of the 49ers, but they couldn't create separation. They didn't create separation with the lead that they had in that game, and that leaves you susceptible to one good drive from the other team. It leaves you susceptible to a trick play where Juwan Jennings is throwing a 50-yard touchdown pass. And so I wanted to see the offense, and specifically Darnold, with the oblique injury, do enough to say, all right, there's not going to be a fluke that flips the outcome of this game. And it was his throw moving left and having that left oblique injury for him to be able to turn his body, set his feet, and make a throw falling left to JSN in the back of the end zone. Of course, Jacson did his thing with the toe tap. Once he made that throw to get him to 17, I was like, all right, now it went from 90% to 100% with that, because not only is it now a 17-point game, and I don't think 49ers are going to score 17 at all, but he made the throw. And he had a couple of wobblers downfield in this game too, but that was a high-level throw, and he made it, and I was like, all right, now it's a victory lap the rest of the way.
Yeah, I wasn't too worried about Sam. It was nice to see him hit that throw to Jax and hit the corner route to Cooper Kupp as well. Both throws to his left. But really, it was more so how Mike McDonald thinks that really made me not too worried. Like, he's not afraid of the backup. Whoever it is, it's like, all right, we got to play Ty Okada today. Great. Ty has earned the right to be the backup. You don't just give those spots away.
Right.
He believes, and he's talked about this. I've asked him several times. He's not just of the mind, damn, such and such has to play. Ugh. All right, here we go. Such and such gets to play. I'm excited about this because I've been watching him practice. I've been watching him study. So now that he's going to play, I'm like, oh, great. It sucks for whoever just got hurt or whatever. But I know that whoever we're putting out there has earned it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be on the team. Like, it's very clear John and Mike will get you out of here if they don't think you fit whatever they're looking for. So
yeah,
and that applies to me for Sam, because Sam said he was going to play. Mike said he believed Sam was going to play, and Mike said something very important. He said if he couldn't do his job, he wouldn't put him out there. Everyone likes to put percentages on it. Let's call it 85% of Sam versus 100% of Drew Lock or whatever. Mike would probably take the 100 if that 85% of Sam can't do the throws we just talked about. Yeah. Right? Like, they're like, we're not afraid to play Drew if we need to play Drew. We don't care if the game is big.
Well, it keeps your playbook open, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And it's the mindset you got to have too. Pete had the same thing, which is why Drew played well against those Eagles a few years ago. It was like, I'm not afraid to play you, because I'm not rostering anyone I'm afraid to play. And coaches can say that, but I've seen Mike put it in application. I saw Pete put it in application. Pete's belief there is how we got that version of Geno that we got. Yeah. Because he was like, I'm not afraid to play Geno. That's why we keep re-signing him, because I believe in him that he can play. Same thing with Drew. It's like, yeah, if Sam's hurt, we'll play Drew Lock because we believe in Drew Lock. We're not afraid. We're not, oh, woe is us. We got to play Drew in this big spot. It's like, no, we have to play a guy who we've been prepping to play if needed. That's how it's a different psychology, a different wording, different framing, but it matters because, as soon as I tweeted out, Drew's on it, or excuse me, Sam's questionable with an oblique. It's like, oh my God, we're cooked, Mike. Drew Lock. And I understand why fans think that way, because you don't see Drew prepare. You don't see Drew in the meetings. You don't see, I get it. I'm not saying fans shouldn't have that reaction, but there's a reason that the other guys don't. They're like, all right, cool, we're playing Drew. Drew knows all the plays. Drew's got a strong arm. Drew's a confident guy. He's experienced. He's a leader. We see him every day.
If I win my route, he'll hit me.
Yeah.
If I hit my block, he'll be able to go through his progression, right?
Yeah, and but that you got to have that psychology as a coach, and you see that sometimes where coaches are like, they're clearly coaching scared of whoever is out there, whether it's their backup left tackle or a backup safety or whatever, backup quarterback, and you can do schematic things to help guys out. That's not what I mean. It's just the idea is like, it really is a mentality thing. It's not something you can just turn on when a guy rolls his ankle the couple days before a game. Drew has to feel that in August, that you believe in him, so that, if he has to play in December, January, or whatever, or what Jarrett Stidham's going through now in Denver, you got to feel that everyone believes in you, that's not afraid to play you, whether it's Amari Kite playing for Charles Cross or whatever it is. I think that's important. That's why as soon as Mike was like, I'm not going to put Sam out there if he can't do his job, it's like, I believe that. I know he would have played Drew. If Sam had tried to throw pregame and his appendix exploded, they'd have been like, all right, 2, you're up. Let's go. Here's the plays on the sheet. Here's the cadence. Go get some snaps in with Sundell. Let's roll. They would have done it and felt and expected the same outcome, by the way. Yeah. And that's a culture thing. Coaches set that, I believe. It's not just whether you have talent or not.
Yeah. No, the McDonald's shit is real because, I've had a lot of fun these last couple of years, been a part of the Seahawks No Table on the Mitch Unfiltered podcast twice a week with Mitch Levy and Brady Henderson. And, we were doing our post game of this beatdown. And, we give out our game balls at the end. And I gave mine to McDonald because, and this is what I said, probably verbatim, is that Pete Carroll is my favorite coach of all time. Y'all have heard me on this show say it. He has had a majorly positive impact on me as a man, as a professional, as a husband, all that. But it turns out you can win a game in the first quarter. And and McDonald all season long has not been afraid to get a big lead and then try and make that lead bigger, because I think not only what it does for your chances of winning and eliminating the opportunity for a fluke play or a fluke sequence to cost you a victory, but also I think that it keeps your mentality like, hey, this isn't just our mentality until we're up by a couple of scores. This is our mentality always. And Pete did that early in his career too. I referenced this before. He ran a fake punt up 40 on Buffalo. Like he was still trying to impress AP college voters, like margin of victory mattered. And with McDonald, it's not like they were out there running trick plays to run up the score. It was just, we are not stopping doing what we're doing just because it's 17-0. Like every single rep, we are going to be doing this. And against a team like the Rams, you're going to need it, because if the Seahawks can overcome that 16-point deficit right after throwing a pick with 9 minutes left, you're down 2 scores, and come back and win that game, the Rams are certainly capable of doing the same thing if you give them an inch, because even if you think the Seahawks are a better top-down team, guy for guy, than the Rams, I think it's close, probably give the edge to Seattle overall, you're still talking about arguably the best coach in the NFL. You're talking about probably the league MVP playing quarterback. You're talking about maybe the best receiver in the NFL this season. That goes a long ways, and it goes a long ways because there are guys in that locker room that have won a Super Bowl before. They know they've got proof of concept for this. And so if Seattle finds themselves in a position to get ahead by a score or two early, it's really comforting to know that you've got a head coach that is going to try and make that lead bigger.
Yeah, and it's making the lead bigger, but the lead becomes bigger almost as just a byproduct, just being who you are.
That's right.
No matter what the score is, like Ernest was saying after the game, if we just be us, it can look like that. Maybe it looks like that in the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, whatever. One of the plays, probably Mike's favorite play, if I had to guess, from the game was when they were up 34-6. And the first play of the fourth quarter, it looks like a little, let's say, inside, was it a zone run? Anyway, Ken runs up the middle. He gets just met by 2 DBs at the 16-yard line. And then 9 different teammates join the pile to push him forward an extra 7 yards, I believe, or extra, at least. It became a 15-yard run.
It's a willpower play.
Yeah, but they were up 34-6.
That's right. That's
the
what I'm
reason
saying.
that play matters is because the score doesn't matter. That's the style. That's us. If you want to know what we're supposed to be doing, it's that. We do that when we're down 34-6. We do that when we're up 34-6. We do it when the score is tied 3-3. Do it when the score is tied 40-40. And because that's the mindset, yeah, you can whip a team's ass and it can be over in the first quarter, like it was against the Saints, or like it was against the Cardinals at home, or like it was in the divisional round. But when you have that mindset, you can do it against whoever. And that's where it's important. Again, that's not something you can just turn on in the playoffs. Everyone has to. The only reason it wasn't 11 guys pushing the pile, because obviously Ken can't push it himself. Kupp had fell, so he was out of the play, and then Sam just shouldn't be in there. Everyone else who was on 2 feet was pushing the pile up 4 touchdowns, in the fourth quarter, because that's what the Seahawks do, and you can't tell guys to do that because it's the divisional round. You start telling them to do stuff because it's the playoffs, you're going to get blown out. Guarantee you get blown out. You got to tell guys to do that in August. Go tell them to do that at the joint practice in Green Bay. Then it's in them, That way, when it does come to that in the playoffs, they're gonna do it, and they're gonna know why they're doing it. To go back to what we were talking about earlier, that's so important. Pete had that too, and the good teams believe in those principles. They believe in that identity, believe in that style, and it's not always just running a route and catching. That matters too, but it really is just like this is who we are. We're the dirty work. And the dirty work and the little things turned into the big plays, And I think they scored a touchdown on that drive as well. So yeah, I think that play really shows why they have so many games that are over, before halftime.
Yeah. Yeah. They're one of the coolest stats that I've ever seen across any sport. And it speaks to this idea of, regardless of the context of the overall game, how important winning the next play matters. Winning this rep matters. And it's that Roger Federer, who you could put his resume up against anybody in his sport, anybody else's sport, has won at a level that so few people in the history of competition have done. And you know what percentage of the points that he played that he won was? 52. He won 52% of the points that he played and won like 95% of his matches. Because if you're winning more than 50% of the time and you stack that and stack that and stack that, it's like investing in S&P 500. Like, just let the compound interest work for you, because all of a sudden that gap gets really, really big over time. And if you are just 2% better, 3%, 4% better than your opponent on every play, and you stack that up over 100 plays in a game, that's how you end up winning by 5 touchdowns. It's how you don't give the Niners even a glimmer of a chance. Well, hey, at least we end our season on a high note. Fourth quarter, we went down, we scored a couple of touchdowns. We showed like, hey, we can move the ball against this team. It's something to build off when we play them next year. No, we are still going to win every single, backups are in, and we're still going to win every rep, even if it's just by a little bit, and we're going to let that compound. And that was really, really, really cool to see, and something that they're going to need against the Rams on Sunday.
Yeah, and it shows up too when the game is tight. To even have a chance in that Rams game in Week 11, they needed a third down. They needed a 3 and out. I can't remember all the plays off the top of my head. I think Kobe made one. I think there was a run stop in there, and then he covered Devontae on the little final play. I do remember that.
Yep,
that's how you get the punt. Now the Rams then had the best punt ever, but to get that punt, you had to force them to get 3 plays and go nowhere, right? And it's the stacking of it. It's the knowing that, all right, win first down so we can get to second down. We get to second down, here's where we're going to be good. We get to third down. All right, let's lock in. Now this is in our favor. And then now Sam can get us down there to try the 61-yard field goal. So I know that because Mike believes in stacking and just puts that into these guys' brains, it's how everything can feel so normal, because you want to try to make it feel as normal as possible. Like, obviously, it's a big deal that there's a lot that matters in these games. It's win or go home. But again, if you get guys thinking about, all right, it's win or go home, can't let my guy catch the ball right here. It's like, well, no. What's the down and distance? What's the coverage? What's my leverage? What routes can I get from this alignment? Then you're good. Do your part right there. Don't worry about that if it's the NFC Championship or it's week 1 or whatever. That it's hard to get that. I mean, it is really hard. Like, it's hard to not feel the magnitude of this stuff. It's all how loud it is. You're playing at night, which always has a different feel to it. You got people at the game that ain't been there. You've been your phone's blown up in ways that ain't blown up. It wasn't blowing up in week 2. So to get guys to just focus on, all right, this play right here is my play. All right, now the next play is my play as well, and the next one and the next one. It's so important. I think it's really important for your defense in particular, because man, you're just one lapse in focus from it being over. Really, look at the Rams. That Kobe Durant thing could have broke them. That basically Hail Mary play to Cole Kmet, like that could have broke them, because as good as Kobe did play at a lot of that game, that one play Ray wasn't there. He gave up the game tying touchdown. So
That's right.
and that could be the Seahawks. All it takes is one play. That's it. Last time they played the Rams, when their defense came off the field, they were losing. They were losing 37-30 because Puka just went nuts on them because they weren't totally focused in on this play. This is what I got to do. These are my rules. Here's how we cover all these end breaking routes. And I believe, I'm still not sure who's gonna win, but I just believe that the Rams, if they are gonna win, it's gonna have to look very different than the ways that they moved the ball on the Seahawks last time, because I think they're gonna learn from just that part, not the schematic stuff, but also, all right, I got to focus on this thing right here, on this play. Don't worry about nothing else. And then we'll be able to stop what they got going. And maybe they just make a great play, which the Rams did that as well because Puka's great. But it also, there's parts of that they can control. And the parts that they can control, I think, will lead to a much more low-scoring game than Week 16.
Yeah, there's one through line, kind of transitive property sort of deal that I think kind of encompasses everything we've talked about so far. And it's two stories involving Gray Zabel. Obviously, rookie. He's doing it at this level. He jumped up 2 levels going from FCS to being a first round draft pick. And he's been exceptional. Everything that you could have wanted from this pick in his first year early on. But there's 2 stories involving him that I know you're familiar with that I think tells a lot about everything we've been discussing. And one is, Zabel was asked about Charles Cross getting his extension and what he's meant to him. And he talks about early in the season, he was feeling down on himself because, he got beaten on a play. And Charles Cross said, "Hey, man, the defensive players get paid too." And Gray was like, that's the first time that I thought about it that way. Like, okay, just because I lost this rep, like that's a good player on the other side. You still have to have that healthy level of respect for the talent and the coaching on the other side. And then later, you got Leonard Williams recently talking about how one of the great plays he made was because this rookie offensive lineman, Gray Zabel, is coming to him and was like, "Hey, man, next time, set up this move and go to it." And Leonard Williams is like, "I can't believe this rookie's telling me how to do my job." And then he did the thing and he made the play. And it's like, man, when you have that freedom of communication where you can encourage and coach both upstream and downstream, you create something that's really special and something that frankly just doesn't exist on a lot of teams, even at the highest level.
Yeah, the anecdote there with Charles was really important, because first round picks, actually most college guys, they're not used to getting their ass whipped, right? Like if you make the NFL, chances are,
especially if you've been playing in the FCS and you're that good.
Yeah, like
you're mopping guys.
Yeah, you're just Reek's not used to anyone running by him, right? Like it just don't happen.
Yeah.
Rashid Shaheed is not used to like, oh dang, that DB stayed with me, right? Same thing with linemen. I'm not used to someone being able to bull rush me, because I made the NFL because that does not happen, So it does take some understanding that, okay, I'm going to lose this rep. And Gray's had a pretty, Gauntlet's probably strong, but whatever's the next tier below that of defensive tackles, he's played against, Jeffrey Simmons. I think he played against nearly all the NFC Pro Bowl defensive tackles. I think he played against most of the All-Pro defensive tackles, with the exception of Zach Allen, I believe. And so, like, when you're playing against Cam Hayward and Jeffrey Simmons, and then you practice against Leonard Williams, and you play the Rams twice with Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk, and some of the other DTs, Sheldon Rankins, the Texans, that he's had to go against. Yeah, like you're gonna lose. You're gonna lose a lot, actually. Well, how do you respond to that? I'm pretty sure Gray's first play in his first preseason game, he got put on his ass. I'm pretty sure. But it's like, all right, now what? You got put on your ass. What are you going to do? Right? You're going to come back to...
Is your career over now? Because one guy beat you?
Yeah, exactly. You got to do it. Same thing as a DB. It's like, all right, you gave up a touchdown. Now what are you going to do? Reek basically cost them the game in week 1. All right, Reek, now what are you going to do? We got 15 more of these, or 16 more of these. What are you going to do the next 16? You're gonna do your job. You're gonna beat you. And so that part of what Gray stood out, because it can be hard for rookies, And I think the other thing that's tied to that is something I'm gonna write about this week, is that Mike has created that culture where all right, if I got beat doing what I'm trained to do, I'm not gonna get yelled at. You know, like if I was going 100% and I got beat or made a mistake, I'm not just gonna get berated by the coach. I'm gonna get coached up, but they're also gonna respect that I was, doing what Seahawks ball is. You're gonna lose reps because, like Charles said, the other guys get paid, but you got to create that culture. Pete did that too. Because when Pete got hired, there was a lot of coaching through the fear of failure. It was like, hey, if you ain't gonna do this, I'll get somebody else to do it, my way or the highway type of thing. I remember Steve Rabel was talking to me about that, how that's kind of the ethos that coaches operated with a little bit before Pete kind of came in with the, hey, let's play ping pong and love each other thing. It wasn't like that. It really wasn't. And now it's a lot more normal to kind of lead with love in that sense. But you got to be willing to deal with guys screwing up and blowing an assignment or whatever. But if their intent is right and you told them that the intent matters, then they can go play free. I think this really applies to Sam, but it applies to everyone as well, including Greg. Greg can know, all right, I lost that rep to Braden Fisk. All right, does that mean I'm now not worth the first round pick? I shouldn't be starting. All these thoughts like, oh, nope. I'm going to go to the sideline. JB, my O-line coach, is going to maybe tell me to do this different. And we're going to go out there. We're going to get them back next. That's it. You're just going to do the stuff you're supposed to, stack the plays. And everybody has to have that mindset, but you have to have the culture that allows for that. If they had just traded Reek after week 1, well, damn, man, what does that say to the rest of your DBs? If I give up a touchdown, I'm out of here. You can't operate like that. You can't.
No.
No,
because you can't out of one side of your mouth tell people not to play scared, and then the other side of your mouth say if you mess up, you're done. Right? That's an impossible balance for anybody to have, much less a 22-year-old, a 23-year-old who's, playing against competition for the first time, unlike anything that they've ever seen. My college coach used to say something, and I was fortunate, to be able to spend time around a Hall of Fame collegiate coach in Frosty Westering at Pacific Lutheran University. And he used to say something all the time about coaching. I took his coaching class. This is a guy who got called up. He was a positional coach for the Pro Bowl, because of his leadership qualities. And I'm sure he wasn't the first person to ever say it. He was the first person I heard say it. He said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And once you know that the people telling you what to do actually care about you, not just as an employee, not just as a player, but as a person, what they tell you lands different. You take it more personally, you take it more seriously. And, that has downstream effects to allow you to play with the freedom that coaches are always telling guys to play with. Well, they have to believe that they have that freedom to do it. And that's something that certainly you had with Carroll, and it really seems like you have with McDonald. Now, I want to fast forward a little bit here. So Aaron Schatz put out recently, the Godfather DVOA, that this NFC Championship game is the highest, and he said by quite a bit, the highest combined DVOA of any game they have on record. And they've been tracking this since 1983. So we're talking 40 some years of data, thousands of teams at this point. This is the best matchup in the history of DVOA. So we're going to fast forward a week, and I'm telling you that the Rams beat the Seahawks, and it's Los Angeles going to the Super Bowl. That's all you know. And I'm going to tell you, how do you think they did it?
They got to Sam. I probably got to Sam. Sam has played good ball the last couple of weeks, but I don't know how instructive that is, because I think we have enough data points, at least I feel so, that the Chris Shula-led Rams defense can get to Sam in ways that other teams just don't. Now, for whatever reason that is, it might not even matter, because the data points are there. Right? Sam's played, were they 15-3? Sam's played 18 games. The other 16, while he has turned the ball over, with the exception of the Houston game, they haven't really looked like the Rams game. Sam has thrown 6 interceptions again in 2 games against the Rams. They were 6 bad decisions / bad throws. None of the fluky stuff and botch a handoff or something. Nothing off a guy's helmet or a tip. Guy stop running his route. Like, blow up the tape. It's very simple. There were 6 bad decisions / bad throws. You usually don't see that. Go look at any other time he played a team twice. He didn't have anything like that. against the Cardinals, any of the in those games. He had 1 turnover total, I believe, in 3 games against the 49ers, right? So what is it about this Rams defense? They have opportunistic DBs. We saw that in how they beat the Bears. They have a very good front. We've seen that for a while. They have 2 Pro Bowl edge rushers in Byron Young and Jared Verse. So I would think that that's the way they did it. They got to Sam because they've proven that they can get to him. And I think what's also been important about that is not every interception is the same. Like the interception he threw against the Panthers. Okay, great. You got it at the 20 now. You got to go 80 yards, score a touchdown. And then D-Law just forced to fumble the next play, so that was over. Go look at both of his interceptions in week 16. One of them's only not a pick 6 because K9 runs a 4-3. The other one happens on the goal line. So, like in both, you took away points with your second one, and you basically gave them points because I think Blake Corum ran it in right after the first pick. So, these are, if we go by EPA, those would be very costly turnovers, more so than just throwing a ball that ends up being a touchback or something like that.
That's right. You throw a deep ball on 4th and 12 and it gets picked off. Okay. From a win probability standpoint, that's a punt. No harm, no foul, right? It hurts your passer rating, but in terms of affecting the outcome of the game, not that big of a deal. You're right. The type of turnover matters, and the way that you combat it is something that every team wants to be able to do, and that the Seahawks tried stubbornly to do all season. It hasn't really clicked until like the last month, maybe month and a half, and that's you run the football well. And over their last 4 games, the Seahawks actually have more rushing yards than they do passing yards. They've been running the ball really, really well. But one of the guys that's been running the ball really, really well is Zach Charbonnet, who unfortunately had what sounds like a, quote, significant knee injury. So there's no more him. And Ken Walker's been splitting time his entire NFL career. But it is easy to forget that he was like as much of a bell cow as modern football ever has when he was at Michigan State. I mean, he was 20-plus touches every single week, didn't lose a step. Right now, injuries have had a lot to do with it. There's very few actual bell cow running backs in the NFL these days. It's just nature of the game, whatever. But he got called upon for the last 2.5 quarters on Saturday, admittedly against a bad run defense, but he took over and had his best game as a pro when called upon. Are they going to be able to run the ball against the Rams the way that they want to, the way that they probably need to, without Charbonnet there?
Yeah, I think the back is less as important as like the perimeter of the run blocking, because that was really good on Saturday as well. Like Eric Sauber was just, he looked like he was playing a revenge game. Dude. He was locked in. AJ Barner is always locked in. He said in like July, I think, that he's the best run blocking tight end in the league, and it's one of those things where he can say it, but then you go look at him block, and it's like, wow, now he cares about this. So Kupp has been blocking really well as of late. It was shaky there a little bit in the middle of the year, particularly against the Rams in the first game. I don't think he blocked well. Jax has been really locked in with his blocking. Like, it's not the thing that Jax is the best at, but when you're all pro, it doesn't need to be. You just got to want to do it. So when those guys do it, because you need explosive runs against the Rams. That's what you really need. Like, that's what they got against the Niners. How do you get those? You get Ken one-on-one with small guys, and you let him go win those matchups. He was winning those matchups. So I think they can. I'm not really worried about, like, Ken only got to be the bell cow for 2 weeks. This one and the next one, that's it. As much as, like, injury concerns have been, like, his label lately, that does not matter right now. He can take 80 touches in like 2 weeks and sit in the cold tub for 4 months or whatever, with a ring on his finger, and he'd be fine, So I'm not worried about... Chance
to make himself a lot of money in the next 2 weeks too.
Oh yeah. So I'm not really worried about that part. It really is just, this is a different front than what the Niners have. This is a real front. And their linebackers are real. Spades, Landman, their whole front is real. Byron Young, Braden Fisk, Kobe Turner, Jared Verse. Like, that's a good front. Josiah Stewart, the rookie, I think, from Michigan. Like, this is a good, well-coached front. They're not like the anecdote we were talking about with Gray, where he was like, he was down on himself. He specifically said he had 2 of his worst games against the Rams, which is why he was so down on himself. Now, that that can get lost in the story there, but that's very important because now they're playing the Rams again, right? Like as good as Gray has been, that is instructive here. So yeah, they're gonna have to run it, but also Sam's still got to make some throws. He still got to make them. They won the game week 16 because he made throws. Ken had a 100-yard day, I believe, but they won because he hit that 7 cut to Coop in overtime. He hit Jacson the back line, and then he hit Sauber. Like, those are throws. Sam was making throws to get them down there, so he's going to have to do that. And I think the other thing is, can they get to Stafford? I think, talk about stats. They haven't sacked Stafford in like 3 years or something. It's just unreal. They didn't get him this year at all. They didn't get him in the one game last year, right? So you're talking about going back to the 2023 season, last time they got Stafford on the ground. That's just not sustainable. I love Seattle's defense. It is great. If you can't get the quarterback on the ground, you are going to lose. That's a guarantee. That should have been my answer to the other question. Did they sack Stafford? Yes or no? Now, 1 sack doesn't mean you had a great game, but I know the 0 means you didn't. So
that's right.
That you have to do that. And Stafford's good. He gets the ball out. He makes the right decisions, and you got to be able to combat that. So if they have another game where he's not on the ground, this is over. That's how they end up playing for the Super Bowl. The Rams, that is.
There is an era of quarterbacking, a golden era of quarterbacking that ends when Matthew Stafford retires, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, even Phil Rivers, Matt Ryan, like this ability to get up to a line, see what the defense is doing, make the adjustments, call out the coverages, understand the blocking schemes, stand in a collapsing pocket, and go through your progression. Stafford is the best doing it, and that's why he's probably going to win an MVP at 37 years old. So it's not just like, oh man, this guy's slippery. Like, our friend Danny Kelly always calls Brock Purdy a sneaky little shit, and that was on full display on Saturday. He was the only guy doing anything. Like, his numbers aren't going to show it, but you watch that game, it's like that guy, 47% pressure rate, and he's running around and he's skipping out of sacks and throwing it back across the field and killing himself to get a 6-yard completion. That is not how the Rams operate. And the way, if I were to answer my own question, the way that the Rams won this game, if they do it, is because they are the only team in the NFL, I believe, and it's because of Stafford, and then what Stafford does being compounded by Sean McVay and Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, is to access the deepest part of the Seahawks defense. Because Seattle's corners, they're good, they're sticky, they're whatever, and that's great when you're getting pressure and you only got to cover your guy for 2-3 seconds. Seattle's corners are so good at staying with a sail route or an over route or a double move for 4 or 5 seconds and not decelerating in order to play the football. You see a lot of guys start to chop their steps or time things. These guys have the ability and the coaching to trust themselves to make plays at full speed and coverage. But Stafford is the best downfield passer in the NFL, and he's got 2 incredible Hall of Fame track receivers, and a coach who knows how to scheme them open. And they didn't really do that. In fact, they didn't do it at all in the first matchup, but they also didn't need to because it was short fields because of those turnovers you mentioned all game. They needed to do it in the second game, and they did. Stafford threw 450 yards. Puka had like 210 and 2. And these weren't just like play into the strength of the Seahawks defense like the 49ers tried to do, where it's like, get the ball to a playmaker in space, make guys miss, get a first down. It doesn't work against Seattle. If you are going to beat this defense, you have to stretch them to the point where there aren't 4 defenders in between you and the goal line when you get the ball. There's 1. And the Rams can access that. And if they're able to access that part of their offense the way they were in that Thursday night game, it puts a ton of pressure on Sam and this offense to not necessarily just play the type of game they want to play. Now they need to start throwing haymakers themselves, and they need to start pressing in a way that they haven't had to press in a long time.
Yeah, I think I've done this now for about 9 years, I think, covering the NFL, and the time on task has really taught me which quarterbacks to value. Like, I'm pretty in or out on a quarterback pretty quickly. Okay. Maybe after like a year or two. I don't need a big sample because I know what I'm looking for. I'm watching your feet, I'm watching your arms, and Stafford can, hear some scouts say like, oh, he can make every throw. Now I know, I don't need that explained to me. Earlier in my career, I'd be like, oh, okay, what's that mean though? Give me some examples. Now
Yep.
I got it. I know what it looks
Yep.
like. It's Stafford. Like if someone asked me, okay, give me a quarterback who makes them all. Yes, Stafford. I don't even think he's the best quarterback. He just makes them all. It's
That's
a
right.
different. AJ Barner likes to say, no route is dead. Right, when in this offense, because Sam's got a really strong arm and he trusts his feet to get to every part of the progression. Case in point, the 2-point conversion. I think Saubert's like the fourth read on that, because no route is dead. Stafford, same thing. No route is dead. If you're the backside in cut and you're number 5 in the progression, Stafford will throw it to you. You need to have your hands up, run your route at the right depth. It doesn't matter if Stafford's looking at you or not. He might just no look at 20 yards over the middle. And that's tough to deal with. And he's got the arm strength to make it. We're recording this on Tuesday. The national championship game in college was last night. And Carson Beck tried to make a throw. I can see why he tried to make it, but he just don't have the facilities for that. Stafford's making that throw. He's back shouldering the whole shot, against cover 2 to the far side of the field. Ain't but so many guys doing that in college or the pros, for what that's worth. So that's why Stafford's so dangerous. He can get you with his eyes. I think on the game-winning, the go-ahead touchdown in overtime, he just no-looked the hell out of Ernest, and he got him off the hash. And it looks like it's Ty Okada's fault. I would put that on Ernest for getting off the hash. And there's only so many guys doing that. You can kind of watch other quarterbacks when they have these PBUs over the middle. We've actually seen them a lot in the playoffs. The reason is they're not looking off the underneath guy. Jalen Hurts didn't look off the underneath guy on the 4th down on the final play. CJ Stroud was getting his guys killed against New England because he kept trying to feed his dig routes. It wasn't looking anybody off, and guys were getting smacked. And number 31 looked like Rondé Barber, right, for the Patriots. So you just see it over and over. Purdy has had some dangerous throws too, because he's like, all right, how do I get it over the linebacker in front of the safety? Well, Stafford's figured out, I look this way, and then I do that, then I'm good. He no-looked a touchdown to Puka in week 16 against the Seahawks. So it's tough. Stafford's tough. He really makes you have discipline. You got to be on it. And if you're not, it's a long day. So like I said, I don't know who's going to win. I still haven't decided. I may not decide till kickoff. But I do know that Seattle's defense has got to be on its stuff, which I believe they will be, because Stafford, like you said, will unlock everything to anybody, whether it's Xavier Smith, Demarcus Robinson threw the game winner last year against the Seahawks. He's a special dude. Like Stafford's, he's as good as it gets right now in the NFL.
Yeah, and the thing that's, I think, especially scary about him is his ability and willingness to do it in the biggest moments. And the last kind of point that I want to make on this before we get out of here is the discourse is always going to revolve around the quarterbacks. And, what's really cool about this matchup and about the Seahawks team is, I have admitted Sam Darnold clears the bar. He has shown that, and when I say clear the bar, I don't talk about like a high jump where he's able to jump over this bar. When I say clear the bar, I mean like as a lawyer, like he has shown that he can pass the bar exam to be an NFL quarterback. He can practice law at the NFL level. He's good enough to do that. Now, if he's defending me against Johnny Cochran, I maybe feel a little bit less confident. But I feel good with Sam Darnold in my corner in most situations. And I think that game against the Rams was so important because we've seen Stafford in this playoff run. That throw that he made to Colby to win against the Panthers was insanely high level of difficulty. Trust my guy, trust the size advantage, 30 yards downfield in the corner. The throw that he made to Devontae Adams on the game-winning drive against the Bears, we all talk about what an incredible catch that was by Devontae, and it was. That was a feet set, right hash mark whip to the left sideline in tight coverage in the only spot that it could be.
In the snow.
In the snow. The throw that made me say, oh, this guy's a Hall of Famer was when he no-looked it to Coop in the Super Bowl on that game-winning drive against the Bengals, right? Like, not only can he do it, he can do it in crunch time. And with Darnold, we hadn't really seen that from his career. We've seen him have good games. We hadn't really seen it until he had it against the Rams in that overtime drive, which I think is the best drive of his career and had 3 of the best plays of his career. And the confidence boosting, I had the opportunity to go on the Ringer NFL show right after that game with Sheil Kapadia and talk about it. We had Greg Rosenthal on a couple days later on the show talking about it and how important it is that Sam can now tell the story to himself, that he is capable of going and making the most difficult throws, to stand in a pocket on a 2-point conversion with the game on the line and get to his 4th read and doesn't have to panic and doesn't have to force a throw. It's not just, I'm telling myself I can do it. It's like, now I've done it. And now I've done it against maybe the best team in the NFL and the team that's had my number. And so I think the way that game ended is so, so important for the Seahawks. And honestly, being able to draw on that is what has me giving the Seahawks the edge in this one.
It reminds, with the Darnold point, reminds me of a scouting term. I believe Daniel Jeremiah said it. I believe it was, if he did it, he can do it. Right? So if a guy puts it on tape in college, like, okay, he did that, so we know he can do it. Now, can our scheme get it out of him? Can our coaches get it out of him or whatever? Can we put him in position? We don't have to wonder if he can make that throw or get off that block. If he did it, he can do it. Same thing with Sam there. It's like, okay, if he did it, he can do it, right? He can do it again. The Stafford thing, what stands out about those throws you mentioned is they were all against good coverage. Nashawn Wright was in as good a position as you can expect him to be on that particular throw against Devontae. Trevon Merrick, for the Panthers, their safety, he's in a great spot on that ball to Colby, and they were perfect. There's no defense for a perfect throw. And that's probably why the Rams are so confident. They're like, all right, yep, Devin Witherspoon's great. Rick's great. Josh Job's great. Kobe Bryant, Julian Love, Nicky.
Yeah, I don't need you to be standing waving your hands open to make this throw work.
Yeah, Puka's had a lot of great catches this year. In his top 5 is the corner route he catches on Spoon in Week 16. Like, there's no Spoon's right there. I was joking with Spoon after the game. I was like, bro, some guys have had like the best catches of their lives against you this year. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. had 2 catches he's never made again, against Spoon in Week 4. Those are the best catches of Marvin Harrison's NFL career. They came against Spoon in the 4th quarter on national TV with the game on. It was nuts. And he's never done that again, ever. Right. But Puka has, in his defense, but like that particular catch was like, Jesus Christ, like how did you do that? Right. So that's where I don't blame the Rams for being confident. Like, hey, we can go up there and beat these guys, even though they have these great DBs, because we're great too. And it's not just player speak. It really is like 9's gonna put the ball where it needs to be. If we just catch it, there is nothing the defense can do, and I have no counter to that. They are correct in that regard. The only thing you can do is go catch it if you're the DB. I wouldn't even try to risk knocking it down. Like, you got to go catch the ball to make sure you guys win this game.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I just want to say to put a bow on this entire conversation from the first thing we talked about to the last is, I'm watching that Rams-Bears game, and coming out of the stadium Saturday night against the 49ers, I was maybe out over my skis a little bit, but I'm like, it doesn't matter who they play next week. Like, I feel more confident about it now than I did before. But I still felt myself like spiritually pulling for the Bears in that game. And yet, when it ends, I'm thinking, and this is something, shout out Caleb Sherman, he said in a fantasy football group chat, was how cool would it be if they win the Super Bowl and the story they wrote was beating the 49ers, the Rams, and the Patriots in consecutive weeks? Like, think about the demons you exercise as a franchise when those are the 3 teams that you beat en route to a Super Bowl. So the NFL season deserves a Rams Seahawks NFC Championship game, just like the 2013 NFL season deserved a Seahawks 49ers NFC Championship game. So this is the way the script was supposed to go. And regardless of who wins, I think football fans win because we get to watch this matchup on Sunday.
It's why Mike McDonald was hired, to beat these two. At some point, I didn't know it'd be year 2 in the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl, but this is it. This is why you're hired. These are the 2 guys. They came and changed the landscape of the NFC when they were hired in 2017, McVay and Shanahan. I think this is McVay's 3rd conference championship. He's 2-0. Shanahan's been there 4 times. and made 2 Super Bowls. Like these are, and this is just since 2017. You got to beat these guys. This is it. This is why he was hired. Now, John had to say, I listened to the actual his interview or the press conference when he hired Mike. I just listened to it last night actually for a story I'm working on. He said a bunch of other stuff. That press conference could have been very short. I hired this guy because I think he can help us beat Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. If that's all he said and left the auditorium, no one should have complained because it really is that simple. It's that's just right. It's like hiring someone if you're in the AFC West. I think we can beat Patrick and Andy. That's why I hired this guy. And if you don't think that, you shouldn't have hired them. And it's really that simple. Can you beat McVay and Shanahan? It was very clear. With Pete, the answer was no. And that's okay. Sometimes it gets to that point. John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin don't coach where they're at anymore. Sometimes it's just time. But yeah, that's why Mike is here. Go beat those two. Go beat them as well when they're I wouldn't say the Niners at the peak of their powers, but they're both 12-win teams this year, right? This is the NFC West was the best division in football. Go beat those guys, and that's how we'll get to the promised land. I'm writing about that this week because that's why he was here. This is it. This is why you go hire Mike McDonald.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a case to be made. NFC West this year is one of the best divisions of all time. I mean, those 3 teams went 40-7 against the rest of the NFL. Think about that. 40-7 against the rest of the NFL.
And all won a playoff game.
That's right. And the Seahawks are the one that won that division, which is why regardless of what happens Sunday, as disappointing as it would be if they lose, this season is such a huge win because you didn't win the NFC South. You didn't win a down year in the AFC North. You went toe-to-toe with 2 really, really good teams, and you beat them. And it's crazy talking about like, okay, this is Mike McDonald's first chance to go deep in the playoffs. This is going to be Sean McVay's 16th playoff game. He's 39 years old. How crazy is that, man?
He's good.
That's insane. I bet 98% or more of all NFL coaches ever never got to 16 games. He did it before 40, so he's going to be ready. Listen, Mike, as always, this was incredible, man. Let us know, A, where we can see the story that you're talking about this week, and then B, where we can get the book, if there's any copies left.
There's a few copies left. We'll have hardcovers. I have some here with me at the house. I'll ship those out to those who want them, and then I will have as many as are remaining Sunday morning at the game with me. I can't guarantee how many that'll be, but I'll try to bring as many as I can that I have in stock. So just DM me on any platform. All my DMs are open now, including Blue Sky. I fixed that. I'm sorry. And I will come sign your book. Just meet me at the Tunnel Club entrance right there. There's a door that leads to the press box. I'll be right there signing books about an hour before kickoff. And then just, follow me on X or Blue Sky, whatever. I post all my stories there, all the podcast stuff. This week I'm writing about Mike. Also going to write about the dark side defense. Talk about a little bit of what we got there with Stafford going against him. We also not quietly, but we got the number 1 offense versus the number 1 defense in the NFC Championship. Don't always get that as well, so that's special. And then I think I'm teaming up with Nate Atkins, our Rams writer, this week too. So I'm content all week. Like I said when we opened the show, I'm busy. But this is a good time to be busy. I'm not like looking at like the Senior Bowl roster, right? Like there's a conference call. There's a conference call scheduled next, I think Tuesday for writers who are covering the Super Bowl. I'm scheduled to be on it. Like this is the time of year.
Let's go.
I like those type of things on my calendar. So that's where you can find all my stuff.
Well, and you being that busy makes it mean all the more to me that you took the time to do this show. I want to leave those listening with one stat, since you mentioned it right at the end. Number 1 offense versus number 1 defense. This is the 7th time that the NFL's passing yards leader has faced the number 1 scoring defense in the playoffs. And in the first 6 games, the NFL's passing leader is 0-6. So let's keep that. Let's keep that streak going. Let's keep that streak going on Sunday. Mike, I appreciate you, man.
Thanks for having me.
All right, y'all. That is going to do it for today. Once again, a huge thank you to Michael-Shawn Dugar for coming in during a crazy time to be covering this team and chop it up with us for about an hour. I think you even went over a bit. That just tends to happen with Mike. As always, you can find Mike Barwin and I on social media as well. I am on Twitter and Blue Sky at Jacson Bevins. That's Jacson. Remember that no K is okay when spelling my name. Mike is on both at Mike Barwin, and the show itself is at Cigar Thoughts on Twitter and at CigarThoughtsNFL.com on Blue Sky. You can catch full video episodes on our YouTube channel at Cigar Thoughts and find the rest of our socials at CigarThoughtsNFL.com. As mentioned previously, this episode is brought to you by Balvenie Premium Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. Y'all know I'm a huge fan of their lineup, and we are thrilled to have them on board as a sponsor of the show. One of the great things about a great Scotch is how well it plays with a good cigar. So once again, we do have our own special release of cigars that you can purchase at a terrific price as a listener of the show. The release of these Cigar Thoughts Stogies has been successful enough for us to continue offering them for the low price of $149. That's right, bundle of 10 for just $149. As many of you know, we partnered with one of the most prestigious cigar manufacturers in the world to release these official Cigar Thoughts cigars, which you can order directly from CigarThoughtsNFL.com. Just follow the link in the show page to get these easy-to-smoke stogies rolled with 13-year aged premium Dominican tobacco leaf, or hit us up on Twitter or Instagram, and we'll send you the details directly. The cigars are going to come with a Boveda humidification pack and a Mylar storage bag to make sure they stay fresh whether you have a humidor or not. Of course, you can listen to this show on fieldgoals.com and everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and you like the show, drop us a 5-star rating and leave a quick review. Thank you to all of y'all listening for your continued support of the show. We know you've only got so much time for podcasts in your life, and it's an honor to be a part of that for y'all. Please know that by sharing this show on social media and with your friends, you give us the juice to keep making this happen. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, onwards and upwards, my friends.